think, the field of health and wellness coaching. So her Wellcoaches concern, her Wellcoaches company, I guess, she's done a great job with them. They've developed an evidence-based curriculum for training health and wellness coaches. And health and wellness coaches are people who come in to a medical practice and help the physicians and the nurses manage lifestyle issues that are really integral to the chronic disease problems that really weigh down the primary care physicians. And they've developed an evidence-based curriculum, they've developed a training program, and they've actually certified 9,000 health and wellness coaches around the country, which is an incredible accomplishment. So Meg's approach is very much at all four levels of the system. So she's going to talk this morning about organizing your mind in order to thrive. Thanks a lot, Meg.
Good morning. So you're used to inhaling a lot of data and exhaling a lot of analysis and prescriptions. So I want to try to change the pace today and spend some time really thinking about how we use our minds. So we might take a moment just to be present. And then multiply that by 10. Really be present. Thank you, Steve. So 2 years ago, I got a phone call from David Sugarbaker, who at the time was the president of the American Association of Thoracic Surgeons. And he said, Meg, I read your book, Organize Your Mind, Organize Your Life, and would you be willing to do a keynote for our 3,000 thoracic surgeons next year? Here's the problem. I've been a surgeon training surgeons for decades. This generation of young surgeons cannot sustain their focus for an entire surgery. I put headlamps on them, and their minds wander. I said, I can't see how they're going to have the same level of competence as their mentors. Can you help? Well, the book, Organize Your Mind, Organize Your Life, which was co-authored with Paul Hammerness here on the far left. He's a psychiatrist at Children's Hospital and an expert in ADD. And that book has a really nice set of rules for using your mind well. But I thought if I'm going to stand in front of 3,000 academic surgeons, I think I need to have something even better to say. So that put me on a fast track to developing a new model. And the people who helped with that were Wilma Kutstall, because she wrote a 600-page textbook on cognitive agility called The Agile Mind, which inspired what I'm going to show you. Shelley Carson is my real partner in crime here. She has mapped the process of creativity into 7 stages and 7 brain states. And then Ron Zilka, who's an electrical engineer but has become a behavior change technologist, has helped me turn this into an e-learning and mobile program. So if you're interested, you can go deeper. So this is the state of affairs for being human today. Obviously, the healthcare space has its own chaos and a multitude of distractions, but we're not alone in this world, in this age of distraction. This interesting study by Microsoft with Canadian adults that came out, it was done 10 years ago and then again last year, and they showed that the attention span of these adults has declined from 12 seconds 10 years ago to 8 seconds today. And a goldfish's attention span is 9 seconds. So we now have the attention span that is shorter than a goldfish. This same study showed that 44% say they struggle to focus on their tasks, 37% say they don't use their time well, and in another study, close to 60% of us consider ourselves addicted to our smartphones. I'm sure none of us in here are attached to our smartphones, but it is a big issue out there. In fact, 3,000 people a year now die because of distracted driving. So if you cannot sustain your focus, the brain's focus, wherever we put, if you think about the mind as an energy field, and we have control over where we move that energy field in our brains. And if we've lost control of where to move that energy field and to focus it like a spotlight, then our focus is impaired. And what happens next is that our memory doesn't work so well. We can't remember. We can't think straight. We can't connect with other people. We can't collaborate on teams. We can't be creative and solve problems. We don't learn, and we most certainly don't perform at our best. So let me ask you, where is your mind right now? This is a mind locator. This is a two-dimensional map. The far left is high control. So that's extreme control, precise detail. When you're going down a medical chart, when you're looking through data, you are thinking, analyzing, inhaling data, exhaling, analysis, diagnosis, prescription. So maybe you're there right now, you're thinking about what I'm saying intently. Or maybe you're on the far right, which is where we let go of our focus. We take the leash off. We let our minds wander. That's actually a really valuable state for the brain. And we live a life today where we have squeezed out every moment. Every moment has a goal. There are no moments left to wander without any control. So maybe you're there now. Maybe you've already drifted away to think about something else more important than what I'm saying. Now, the top down starts with high thinking, which means you're in your head, so to speak. Your mind's energy field is in the prefrontal cortex. And down at the bottom is the experiencing regions of the brain. And one of the reasons that mindfulness training is so popular right now is that we don't visit this place very often. We don't go deep and back and actually sit in our senses like a frog and just inhale the experience of the moment, not the data. And open awareness is a beautiful place to spend time because you are opening your senses, you've cleared out your prefrontal cortex. It's like a small vacation. And it's the beginning of the creative process, because if you don't notice what's going around you, you're missing all kinds of raw material for your working memory that you can put together in creative ways. Now, the far left is where you take that experiencing at the bottom and left, and you narrowly, gently focus it. So you might be focusing on your quadricep muscles when you're doing a yoga pose, or you might be focusing on your eating, or you might be focusing on your breathing because you want to upregulate your parasympathetic nervous system for a few moments. So those are different places you could put your mind. Whereas mind right now, so this is considered to be by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, if you know about the work on flow. The state of flow is considered to be one of the most important brain states for psychological well-being. And flow is actually not a controlled state. It's not a state of analyzing, it's a state of letting go. So right now, when I'm presenting, I'm in flow. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to do next. I'm actually not thinking. I'm letting my brain, I'm letting the moment carry me. The more of this you can find in a day, the better. So Shelley built these 14 brain states. I had the two-dimensional map, and I really wanted to show people that there were a lot of places you could put your brain in a day. And when you're in the healthcare space, which is so data-driven and evidence-based, we tend to live up in the top left. We tend to live in our thinking brains. We tend to be on the analytical side, and we are very controlled with our focus. Some of you may lean towards the creative side, so you may live more in the middle on the right. But the point here is that each of these brain states, now the pictures, you see the color codes. The orange means there's more activity, the lighter the orange, a little less. The blue is generally less active. The yellow regions are subcortical regions. You can't produce these in an MRI machine, so this is just a metaphoric depiction based on Shelley's review of around 30 neuroscience journals, and these get updated quite frequently. But the point here is that each of these is distinct. And what is flow in terms of brain activity for me may be different from what it is for you. However, that is a rich state. And it's when we go deep into each of these brain states, that's where the juice is. So one of the first ways to deal with burnout is to start to extract more juice out of each moment and each brain state. So just a quick tour in layman's language of the hot spots that Shelley's laid out here. So if you look at the left executive center, so that's the place where we are controlling. In fact, we're really using the executive center to deliver all of these brain states, and preferably the right brain state for the right task. The frontal pole, the little discs at the front, that has a number of functions, but one of them is the metacognition, where we are able to watch ourselves, like we get off the stage and watch from where you're at and see ourselves in the movie or see ourselves on. That's meta-awareness. That's what mindfulness training, it's one of the reasons people are learning how to do that, so we can detach and watch ourselves. Then there's the me center, where you're thinking about yourself, and then the you center, where I'm focused on thinking about you, which is all connected to the default network, which runs through the middle, and that's the place where your mind wanders. When you let your mind go, the default network is active, which is why you come up with all these great ideas when you're in the shower or you're running or you're doing something that is not focused. Then we have the judgment centers, which are just underneath the executive center on both sides. And so when we talk about being non-judgmental, what we're simply talking about is dialing down the judgment regions for that task. So it's not like we have to force ourselves to find a way to be something we're not feeling. I mean, we're in a judgment mode all day when you're a health professional. You're analyzing all the time. But if you dial that down, you can actually get out of your judgment brain. Then the R&D centers, as Shelley calls them, the association centers, are on both sides of the brain in the back. The visual processing and visioning the future is in the far back. And then deep down in the limbic system, we've got the amygdala, which is where our emotions are processed, and fear is one of the ones that we all suffer most from. The memory network, where we're remembering things, and then the reward center, where the dopamine system. So this is the color coding for these charts. So let's just take a moment and experience open awareness. So imagine that you've got, and it depends on what generation you are. For me, it's a dial in my brain. If you're a millennial, it might be a click down, so you can pick whether you want to click down or dial down. But imagine there's a dial in your brain. Dial down right now, and close your eyes if you want. Dial down your executive control region, left forehead. Dial down the judgment centers just behind there. Dial down the me center, so you're not thinking about yourself. So now you've got more bandwidth, more mental energy to move, and move it back into your sensory region. And just sit there for a moment. And on the right-hand side of the brain, in the middle, there's an area that's now thought to be related to curiosity. So you could just dial up your curiosity about the next moment. So just in a moment, you can move your mind's energy field around, and you can move to this place. I like to think of this as a reboot. Just takes a couple minutes, even less. You pull out of your thinking brain, you give your brain a rest. So if we're going to talk about an organized mind, then what's a disorganized mind? What are the strategies one would want to use in order to access all of these beautiful states of our brain? So being mindless is not that. So that means we want to be intentional. Being distracted is the opposite of going deep. Being scattered, like you have a number of screens on your computer, is the opposite of being agile, which is really deep sequential tasking. Being too left brain dominated is not diverse. So what I'm really saying is that there's kind of a cross-training advantage to using more of your brain. And when we're frenzied by all the change and all the stress today, then we don't have the emotional energy to power this up. And in fact, you need a lot of physical and emotional energy to use your mind's energy field well in a day. And I think that, for me, is one of the biggest cases for eating and exercising and sleep. Most of us really don't think enough about the long term, but if we thought about the short-term benefit of those things, which is the way I use my brain now, then that's more compelling often to live a healthy lifestyle. So basically then, the rules are to be intentional, to go deep, be agile, diversify, and be energized. So let's go through that, and I'm going to walk you through how you might upgrade your physical energy and mental energy as well as use your brain states well. This is one of the simplest studies, graphics, to show the power of exercise. So these are pre-adolescents. They had a test. The control group read before the test. The study group did a 20-minute walk. And you see the EEG measure of attentional resources in the kids that did the walk. So you see how much more mental energy we have after exercise. And I don't think you need 20 minutes. I think 5 minutes going up and down stairs, a few yoga stretches can re-energize your mind. So exercise is extremely valuable, especially in small doses throughout the day. Like you, I ask a lot from my brain in a day, and so I spend a lot of time thinking about what to eat, which will maximize my brain energy. These happen to be, I'm not advertising for these companies, these happen to be the foods I rely on. Chia seed is particularly good for brain energy. Lean protein, wild salmon, berries, water, just a little bit of espresso has very little caffeine and some antioxidants. So one can really power up your brain through the day by choosing your foods well. So let's talk about a quick drill for settling your frenzy. And negative emotions are often activating, but it just depends on the dose. And when the dose is too high, they emerge, in a quite dramatic and quick way, they come up from the limbic system, they take over the prefrontal cortex, they dim the lights, they turn down our ability to focus. So it's very important to be able to pull ourselves into a calm place quickly. So this is the meta-awareness brain state. It takes some agility to go here. This is like getting a strategic perspective. If this brain state looks quite similar to being strategic around outside issues. So basically, when you get meta, when you're activating your frontal pole, you're standing back from your emotions. And there's a nice study that shows if you simply notice and name the emotion, so I'm feeling angry right now, you don't have to say it out loud, I'm feeling impatient, I'm feeling frustrated, take a moment to get the tenor right. Is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it impatience? Just get to know the emotion a little bit. And that step alone, all by itself, gives the prefrontal cortex back its ability to regulate our emotions. So that will settle in a moment. And if you know about the 5-facet mindfulness assessment, what you're doing with this meta state, this quick, and I don't recommend spending a long time in this state, because you want to pull out to observe yourself, But when you do that, you split your mind's energy field because you're still doing the thing you're doing and you're watching yourself. So you really can't stay there very long. You can't watch yourself all day, but it's a place to visit, like a little pause button. And when you do that, you pull yourself out of automatic pilot. You're now watching and not judging and interpreting. You're describing in an objective fashion. Your objectivity is back, and you're not carried away by those emotions, so you can bring yourself back to calm. What the mindfulness and the self-compassion fields have taught us is the value of accepting our emotions. We might wish that we didn't get angry at those socks on the floor, or the nurse that made a mistake, or your physician that stood you up, or whatever happens. We may wish we didn't overreact. But the way to handle that, in fact, is to remember that every cell, this is the biological imperative, every cell is doing the best it can with the resources it has at hand. So you may wish you were behaving in a more mature, grown-up fashion in this moment, but that's the best you can do right now. And that's where you need to get to quickly. And from here, Mother Nature's soothing balm comes into play. Do you know the story of this picture? The twins, they were born, I think it's probably 19 years ago now, since I've been telling the story for a while. And they were 3 months early. They're Massachusetts born. And one, within a few days, was thriving and doing well, and the other one was languishing and was near death. And the nurse decided to break the rules, which is to keep them in separate bassinets to prevent infection, decided to put them together. And within a few moments, they found this. The thriving twin had her arm around the languishing twin. So there's not much happening in the prefrontal cortex. It's, hey, sis, can you help me out here? I'm about to die. You know what? This is basic, organismic. We can all do this. And you might want to not do it in front of other people, but if you simply put your hands over your heart or hold your hands, just give yourself a moment of compassion. That's all you need to do. Name the emotion, accept it, feel compassion. 10 seconds at most. And if you want to go a little further, you can say, well, I wonder what the message is here. I wonder what there is to learn. Why am I reacting in this way? What else could I do? What should I learn from this? And we're going to talk about positive emotions in one of the sessions today. The wonderful thing about positive emotions, which are completely different in character than negative, is that they have a very positive impact on our ability to use, of our mind's ability to use our brain well. They improve our ability to focus, to be creative, to be agile, to think strategically. So if you can shift the frame to something you're grateful for, something you appreciate, just a moment, a photo of a family member, just a little music, something that gives you a quick lift up. Okay, so now your brain is energized, physically, emotionally, and calm, and you're ready for your patients. So let's move around the map. So you might think about, before you start each patient visit, moving into this experiencing open awareness state. Dial down executive function, dial down judgment, dial down me, I'm not thinking, dial up sensory. I find that's an easier way to move into rapport and connection than trying to get there from thinking and across the top. It's almost like you have to go to opposite ends. This is exactly, I'm sorry I don't have them side by side, but the analytical, judging brain state, everything that's on in that brain state is off in this brain state. So if you want to quickly pull out of your thinking, intense thinking state to be able to connect with another human being, this is a nice way. You're agile, you're moving back, and which feels good. You get a moment to take your breath, to rest, and then you can move into connecting. So here's an opportunity to be agile. Again, you don't have to be deep, doesn't have to last very long. It's just if you think about going deep, coming out, quickly, agile, going deep, moving forward, It's basically a way of moving around your brain that is like a dance if you do it well. And if you want to upgrade your ability to focus, then you want to activate the dopamine system. So you want to think about what's the good thing that could happen here. What is it that I'm looking forward to here? There are many ways to harvest and harness your motivation, but taking a moment and saying, I want to do a really good job with this next patient. I'd really like to do a little better than I did the last time in terms of connecting. If you just tell your brain, hey brain, we're in this to do a good job in this next few minutes, that simple statement will actually generate a little burst of dopamine, and you'll get the benefit of the additional energy. Now, you may have to move into preparing, planning, and thinking, and this can be unpleasant when you've now got to go check your electronic medical record. Maybe you need to remind yourself. So you've come out of this nice open awareness state, you've taken a breath, and now you're moving into, okay, let me see what I need to do. So there's, again, another place for agility. You've moved back up to the top left from the bottom right. And you have to do that, right? You have to now get into your computer and now focus on that for a second. So another way of picturing, of activating the dopamine system is to imagine the outcome. And that's something you can do with your patient, too. You can say, what would you, if you could get what you want to have happen today, what would that look like? What would your picture look like? How can I help you most today? So now you're both activating your dopamine systems. You're doing that today. You're doing that together. So let's talk about rapport. So this is a graphic that is intended to show the fact that our mirror neurons, the social brain, so this is what's thought to happen, is that when we are truly connected with another person, our mirror neurons are syncing up. So you may be right now syncing up to my neurons by just following my pacing, following my voice. To some extent, I'm trying to embody what I'm talking about, so that if you hitch a ride on my neurons, you're taking away some of that, even if you don't have the language for that. So that's what you want to create, is that you're actually in an energetic place where if your patient syncs up to your neurons, that's a good place to be. Because we have a lot of impact as helping professionals. The state of our minds has a direct impact on the state of the people that were with us. So we want to enter that. So let's talk about the rapport state. So the rapport state, in the two-dimensional map, it was up in the middle on the right-hand side. It is a defocused state. So you're not thinking about what you're going to say next when you want to move into rapport. Executive center is dialed down. Judgment center is definitely dialed on. You do not want to send the message that I'm better than you or that I'm judging you. Now the you center, I'm focused on you, that's dialed up. And what comes along for the ride are the creative regions. So when you're really in rapport, the dopamine system's active, your R&D association centers are active, you're visualizing your default network. It's actually a pretty creative place to be. You don't know what you're going to say next. You don't know what they're going to say next. It's a precious, creative place for just a few moments. You don't have to worry about the health record. You don't have to worry about what you're going to do next. You're just simply taking a moment to move into this rapport. And it's worth reminding ourselves that because we've spent so much of our day with our judgment regions turned on, that is working against us when we're with other people. And so we really want to dial down those judgment regions in that moment. Bring them back when you're ready to figure out what the options are. So you're not going to leave them off. If you're used to living with them on all the time, it may be hard to let them go. But it's really important when you're connecting with another person that you let that go. So you've got your dopamine system fired up because you really want to be there and you really want to help. Now help the patient do the same. Why are you here? What matters to you most? What can I do that would make the most difference right now? Sometimes I think we are concerned about open questions like that because we think we're just going to stir up this outpouring and we'll lose control. We won't be able to steer after that. We'll just get completely overloaded. And I think that may happen occasionally, but most patients know you don't have a lot of time. They respect your time, especially if you give it your undivided attention. And I think then what happens, I see this with myself in a doctor's office, is that you work hard to get what you want to say out quickly and as succinctly as possible. So allow some openness, because that creates safety and it creates connection, deep connection very quickly. And you can do a lot more with that when it comes time to be creative and collaborate. So when you move into rapport mode, you're in, wherever that is, it's in your heart, wherever that lives for you, that evokes being connected, then it's easy then to move into collaborating. If you come out of left brain thinking, analyzing, and try to move into, well, let's collaborate now, it's awkward. If you move into really connecting and connect deeply, just for seconds, not long, just seconds, then when you start the dance of back and forth, the inquiry, whatever information, conversation you need to have, the collaborate regions, the social brain really comes alive, and now you're really together. And this state is, I think, the most beautiful of all of them, because if you look at what's happening here, there's the most orange, so we have a lot of brain activity. It's balanced, which means it's integrated, so you've got left and right, you've got back and front, you've got thinking and creative, you've got the creative regions going. So this is why when we collaborate with people, truly collaborate from a rapport, a state of connection, and building on top of that, we get amazing things happen. This is what coaches live for. We create a session where we build rapport, we get whatever out, what that needs to out, and then we know if the other person needs to shift their mindset and shift their perspective in order to start the change process, which means they have to change their mind a little before they change their actions, then we are looking for ways to make that perspective shift happen. That's our business. That's what we try to deliver in a coaching session. And so we pay attention to how we get our clients' minds ready for this creative mode. And then we let go. Because if we have an agenda, then we've already locked down what might be possible. If we have any assumptions, we've already closed down openings. So this is, again, a place of letting go and not knowing where, and that's hard when you're a healthcare professional where it's all about hanging on to control. And yet, this is a beautiful place. And when you really let go, a lot of things pop very quickly. This works with kids, too, by the way. You don't have to save it for your patients. So I mentioned at the beginning the flow state. So this is, when I was talking to the surgeons, this is the state where they're very fortunate because they spend a couple days a week with multiple episodes, couple hours at a time in a deep flow state. They really lose sense of time and place. And when you're in family practice and other specialties, your day is chopped up into so many small pieces. You miss out on these deep flow states. So there's a workshop today on writing and journaling. That's an interesting way to find flow. Maybe not in your workday, but maybe other times. If you really can't find a way to extract some flow out of your day, then find a way to do it at home. Whether you love to cook, whether it's a sport, whether it's a hobby, whether it's debating, whatever it is that is your creative outlet, be sure that you be sure that you get some of this every day. And this is Csikszentmihalyi's rendition of this flow state. So it's basically at this sweet spot where your skill is high. The higher your skill, the richer the flow state. And the challenge is just slightly above your skill. So you activate it because you're not entirely sure you're going to be able to do it. So you're engaged, you're curious, you're motivated. And when you get to that place where you balance the challenge and skill, then you enter the flow state. So when you're in the exam room, find the areas of your day where you can let go and let your brain take you into these beautiful states. And you can get there through even a brief conversation with a patient as well. So, mind meld. It's great, I'm a biologist. I'm not a psychologist. You probably figured that out already. And I live in a world of coaches, many of whom are psychologists. And when I left my biotech career 15 years ago, I thought I was saying goodbye to biology. And so I have to say it's just wonderful to be here and be talking about biology again. So if you think about how kids learn, if you've got kids or grandkids, before they have books and pencils, they watch. That's how they learn how to walk. That's how they learn how to talk. They watch, they listen, they tune in. That's the mind meld. And as much as you want your patient to take control, get into the driver's seat, and find their way forward, you have a lot of influence via your presence. So I'm just expanding on what I said earlier. So you're intentionally cultivating the things you think they might need. So if they're not feeling calm, then you want to bring calm. One thing that goes along with chronic disease is a fierce inner critic. People may not tell you that they're angry at themselves for not taking care of their health. Generally, they don't talk about it, but they are. And the anger and the inner criticism that we impose on ourselves is much worse often than what other people can do to us. And so one of the reasons to be compassionate, it's not just because it feels good, but you're actually helping your patient accept and be compassionate for where they are today, because they can't change what's happened in the past. If they can get to a place of accepting and acknowledging they're not alone, a lot of other people are in the same boat. Our bodies are very complex machines. They're hard to manage. The world is asking a lot for us. Maybe they didn't get the self-regulation genes. So when we're being compassionate, the reason we're really doing it is to help them be compassionate toward themselves. You don't say that out loud, but that's really why you're doing it. Confidence. They don't believe they can control their health. They lost that confidence a long time ago. So one of the things you want to convey through your own experience, your own struggles, is you can do it. And you don't have to say you can do it. You just are being the energy. I know you can do it. Hope. There is hope. There's a potential for a better day. And there's other energy, zest, humor. So whatever are your personality strengths, where you shine, where you sparkle, use those. Use your personality. This is not a model for personality states. That's a different talk. But you have them. You've got your own strengths. And so when you use them intentionally, your patient is hitching a ride on your mirror neurons for those few moments. And so then they leave with more energy, more confidence, more motivation, more hope than when they came in. That's an intervention. Not a pill. We're human beings, and we need other human beings to listen to us, to appreciate us, to care about us, to help us, to support us. There's data now showing that empathy is an intervention. That's why there's a company here, Empathetics, delivering it. These are interventions. We can be the healing force just by our presence. Again, that takes agility, takes intention, and it takes going deep. So, how many of you are creative? Agile, okay, and how many of you use that in your days as a health professional? Good, okay, good. This one doesn't come easy for me. Who in here is more left brain dominated? Okay, and who's got more right brain? A few of you? Yeah, so more left brain. Okay, so again, I want to encourage us not to get stuck in those labels because one of my messages here is that diversity matters. And the optimum, ultimately, is integration, is using both well. I had the idea this week, actually, that maybe overwhelm is in part when we're not using both sides of our brain fully. I just leave that idea with you. Because if you're a linear thinking, you are very good at self-regulating, which throws out the baby with the bathwater. You regulate out your impulses, which is a good thing, but you're also regulating out your ideas and your new possibilities and experiencing things. You're missing a lot when you're up in your left brain. So if you can access creativity and learn how to do that, practice that. We all can do it. We all did it as kids, right? We just kind of had it all drilled out of us. So the more you can access that, and those of you who are creative, you all know that you need to have put the effort into regulating that creativity, or you're having difficulty getting things done. So we both need both. So one of the fun stories I have from a physician who is now a full-time coach in Kalispell, Montana, and she was one of the biggest cynics about coaching when I first met her. So this was her idea. She bought the Rory Story Cubes. These are dice with icons on them. And she has a bowl of these on her desk. And she's in a medical fitness facility, and they get a lot of physician referrals. And because she's a physician, she gets the toughest cases. So she gets the people with advanced diabetes, with heart failure, with chronic pain that's, impossible to deal with. And so they sit down, and you can imagine they're down. And so she says, why don't you take one of these cubes and throw it on the desk, and tell me when you get whatever turns up, when you see that, tell me how that relates to why you're here today. And they look at her and say, what? You're my doctor. What are you doing? So the person pulls out the dice and rolls it, and, there's a horse. And so he said, well, I remember really liking horses when I was a kid, and I'm not really getting a whole lot of pleasure in my life right now. So anyway, whatever, they're out of their linear mind. They have they've allowed the creative juice to flow, the more intuitive, more impulsive, more spontaneous, and then the conversation picks up from there. So even in a few moments, you can have someone pull out their wallet and say, pull something out of your wallet and tell me how that thing relates to how you're going to overcome the challenge we were just talking about. So there's lots of ways to do this, but I encourage you to play with this, because a little bit of this it's childlike. It takes you back to a playful energy. It's fun. And one of the other things, flow is a creative state. Most of us have too little creative expression in our lives. And we are, as humans, creative beings. And when our creativity isn't used, we suffer. And that impulsiveness goes elsewhere. It makes us eat the chocolate chip cookie. It makes us take the extra glass of wine. It makes us grab for the thing that we are, not really addicted to, but maybe a little bit. And so indulging your creativity is very important, to indulge the impulsivity so that there's less need for impulsivity when it's not healthy. So now it's time to get agile again. We talked about being in a strategic perspective in meta-awareness, where you're in a strategic perspective on yourself. So you might be at the end of your visit and you want to zoom out. You've been zooming in, you've been talking about the details, lots of details, how to take your medicine, what are you going to do next? So now you zoom out, so that takes agility. It takes agility. In fact, Wilma Kutztal's 2 modes of agility were high to low control, which was on my map. But her other dimension was nitty-gritty, sort of specific back out to abstract. So that's a form of cognitive agility that's actually quite difficult. And sometimes some of us get stuck in the details, some of us get stuck in the big picture, some of it gets stuck in the train station in the middle, kind of in the abstract place, and we don't go detailed and we don't get. So practice that zooming in and zooming out. And now we've got the idea of using our fingers on our devices to zoom in and out, which gives us an embodied way to think about this. So you can ask at the end, so what's the big picture here for you today? What's the most important thing that matters? Pull back and what's going on here? And what's important to you? And what do you want to have happen by the next time we sit down together? So there is a place for being judgmental with your patients. Not judgmental of them, but back into your mode, which we let go of at the beginning, which is the analyzing and hailing the data, analyzing the data, diagnosing, testing hypothesis, all that you do when you come to a good judgment call. So you want to bring that back in. You want to help your patient do the same. So there is a place for this, and there is a little bit of creativity here too. You see the R&D association centers are on as well. We don't have a brain chart for gratitude. I saw Robert Emmons speak at the Positive Psychology Conference in June. This is the International Positive Psychology Conference, which is a great event if you want to dive in. And there's basically one scientist who's kind of the expert behind all the major themes in positive psychology. There's Todd Kashdan, who's Mr. Curiosity. There's Emmons, who's Mr. Gratitude, and on and on. And as an aside, there is a growing literature to show that gratitude is an intervention that improves health. There's a number of studies in heart failure and other diseases. And I think what happens in gratitude is we pull ourselves out of our self-rumination, thinking about ourselves, and we are grateful for something beyond ourselves. So it moves us into a higher purpose state, appreciative, savoring gratitude state. And this is it's great to be grateful and to spend a few moments at the beginning of a visit. Thank you for coming. I'm sorry you had to wait in the waiting room. I'm really appreciative of that. Thank you. So taking a moment to really express gratitude is another intervention. Now, in terms of mapping this out in the brain, the way I think about this, if it's helpful, is that what these brain charts taught me, what Shelley Carson taught me by putting this device together, is that each of these task/brain state match is a place to enter and go enjoy deeply. But also, this is a bit more like an orchestra. It's much more fluid than that. And if you can start to get conscious of, okay, so I know there's a place in my brain for gratitude. I don't know where it is, but I'm going to dial it up right now. Or I'm going to dial up a sense of adventure or curiosity. Or I'm going to dial up a sense of purpose. Or I'm going to dial up compassion. Or I'm going to dial up presence. Whatever, so you can start to realize you've got the steering, you've got you're the conductor of your own orchestra. You can move in and out of these brain networks. And while we, maybe someday we'll be able to, the neuroscientists have been talking about this, have thought if we could really train people, a group of people to enter these, we could map them out and we could show you where they are at, and maybe we could come up with more concrete ways to teach people how to do this. But for now, I'm leaning on the fact that most of you have experienced each of these in your own life already. So you've got some reference point, and that's really your reference point for that state. So that means if you start to become more aware of when I'm being creative and when I'm in flow, then you can start to move around this map with intention. And last, this all takes a lot of energy, so it's really important to take breaks. It's really important to have downtime, whether it's a little vacation in the open awareness state, whether you let your mind wander for a few moments, which means you turn off your devices, you don't immediately go to your devices, whether you take a body break, a couple stretches, some stairs, a chance to use the narrow awareness, sensory experience of your physical body. So that's the map. These are the 14 brain states, at least the ones we have so far. My encouragement then is to be intentional about using these states, going deep in each one, being agile when you shift around the map, and diversifying. See if you can't use more of these more of the time. As Nietzsche said, one's own self, you could say one's brain is well hidden from one's own self. Of all mines of treasure, one's own is the last to be dug up. So enjoy the treasure hunt, this greater mastery of your mind and your brain. Thank you. Sure, yeah. Some questions? We've got if you don't mind using the mic, that would be great.
Thanks. I really enjoyed your lecture, and I am familiar with a lot of the techniques that you're talking about and have been using them in the past. The disconnect, frankly, is that the system as it is works against us being able to do that. It's all about speed and efficiency. And I usually see my patients first and then do my notes at the end of the day. Sorry. I usually see my patients first and do my notes at the end of the day. My practice consists completely of people who are either in chronic pain or have severe complex disabilities. The rehabilitation model that we had in place in the 70s and 80s works beautifully. It's exactly what this is trying to achieve. The trouble is that we had it, and now we're going in the opposite direction. People with disabilities and multiple chronic conditions are the first people to feel the temperature of the water going up. I have a patient I saw the other day who is quadriplegic. I've known him for 30 years. And in the last 2.5 years, he's lost 30 pounds.
Wow.
I'm not his primary care physician. His primary care didn't notice it. And kind of have to figure out why that might be. So I called her up, and she said, "Oh, no, it's not so bad. He had it, but now it's better." Well, not really. And you need time, and you need to slow down in order to get. I think what we're going to see is that we're measuring the wrong things, and that, 10, 15 years down the line, people are going to shake their heads and say, well, what the hell did they do?
I mean, we've forgotten how to optimize being human and how to use that in healthcare as an intervention. We have. And, I mean, it's going to take an uprising
Both.
of all of us to make that point.
Last comment. Okay.
Two more, yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. Very enlightening. One of the things I thought about at the end when you were talking about gratitude, there was an article or an abstract I read not long ago that was talking about patient satisfaction in a general practice. And they had a coach come into the practice and talk about this. And one of the recommendations of the coach was to say to the patient at the end, "Thank you for coming today," right? And so one of the really well-respected physicians in the practice for many years had a large patient population. It just didn't make sense to say that, or what, he didn't feel comfortable saying that. And after 6 months or so, he noticed that everybody else's patient satisfaction had gone way up, and his stayed low. And
The
so
data is.
and so he decided to incorporate that, and predictably his satisfaction levels went up.
Yeah. These are small micro interventions that people really value.
So I was wondering if you could speak on transition. Okay, so the transitional brain states, so notice
Like when you're moving between two
right. So you're, it was well articulated about the different, brain states we're in, but what about switching, the idea of switching? And particularly I'm thinking of ADD children.
Yeah.
And I've noticed a transition period, like, the need to give a transition period. But what would be some maybe cues or ways to help those individuals, children or patients, adult patients, that struggle with the transition? We say, okay, hey, I see where you want me to go, but I'm not sure how to get there. What's the bridge?
Right. So you mean if I'm, say for a kid, I'm doing a video game and now I need to move to doing my homework, right? Yeah. Yeah, so, and for each of us. So, I mean, what you're really trying to do is to build up the executive regulation, right? So I'm in this task, and this was fun, and I was using, this is the state I was in, and now I need to change gears. I think the one thing that I've done with people with attention deficits is to help them declare the purpose of the next task in a way that's meaningful to them. Like if they're rebelling against their parent, or you don't want to do the next task, then it's hard to leave the last thing behind. But if you say, I'm doing my homework because, and it's an autonomous, it's a motivated reason, then the dopamine system provides the energy to help to enter into that next state. So that would be one thing that I found that works. It's getting intentional. I'm leaving high brain, we're leaving the game behind. Oh, what a drag, we're having so much fun. That's not easy to do, but we're gonna do it, and now we're gonna move over. So you actually have to talk to yourself. Now we're gonna move into doing homework, and as much as we'd really rather be playing the game, tomorrow will go better if I do that because it's, whatever the tape. So you really have to create the language, which is left brain. You have to create the language and the talk yourself into. And then if you don't do that, then you're much more easily distracted because something else better comes along. And then you move, then you transition without wanting to. Or you do want to, but maybe the homework wanted you to stay there.
So speaking of transition, we're going to transition. Thank you. That was great. I really think the challenge of integrating the flow creative mode with the technical mode is really, that's what we're dealing with. And the system stuff really has caused some amount of disintegration. I agree with the woman who said, we used to have this. I think we had this much more 10, 20, 30 years ago. And we kind of lost it. And how do we recapture it in view of the system that's maybe measuring not all the right things? So that's the $64 trillion question, or $64 billion question in any case. So we're going to transition. There's a brief break, 5-10 minutes. I think there's some food and coffee in the room up to the left. And then we're going to go to these different workshops. The rooms here in the Medical Society all have a geographic name, and I'll leave it to you in the name of a little humor to consider what is the connection between empathy and Beacon Hill, the connection between mindfulness and Fenway, resilience and Berkshire, I think I get that, and journaling in the Charles River, okay?